Hello there. Welcome to my kitchen on this very dreary Monday morning. This is the Moonbound podcast, and I am your host, Julia, and I am the maker of all the things for Moonbound Artisanship. And this podcast is also about making all the things. Spinning, knitting, crocheting, weaving, dyeing, you name it, I'm probably interested in it and want to talk about it. I wanted to, first of all, apologize for my recent radio silence. It has been way too long since we chatted, and I have missed you. The upside, however, to radio silence is that I have a lot of things to talk about with you today. So I'm going to break this as I'm recording it into smaller segments based on topic so that hopefully it will go easier and my camera won't time out on me. So to jump right in, I have finished the translation wrap, which is what I'm calling it because it has a lovely French name, which I can't pronounce. This is Brooks Farms yarn. It is their Ellie, and it is 50 merino and silk, and it was really a lot of fun to knit with. Okay, having said that it was a lot of fun to knit with, these big loops are made by sticking your needle in knitwise and then wrapping the yarn around your needle 3 times, pulling it through, and then on the next row you catch just the first loop of those 3 loops in a knit stitch. And so while it is just knitting and purling, it does require a lot more control on your tension than I am used to knitting with. Just because you have this extra big loop that you have to keep track of and keep pulling out of your way. I'm sorry, I just put this too close to my face and ended up with all sorts of knitting fibers up in my nose. I really like it. I haven't blocked it yet. I still have ends to tuck in. And I am going to try to block it a little bit longer, just a little bit. I mean, it will make a nice wrap right now, but a little bit just to pull that tension, get it a little bit more even, would be good. So there is that. That is done. Finished object number 1 for today's podcast. Very excited about that. Number 2 is the socks, which I have on Ravelry called Forethought Fast. My intention was to do them very quickly. The reality is, even my husband noticed that these were slowing me down. And I'm not really sure why. They are the first toe-up socks I've done in a long time. But that part didn't seem to take very long. I just kept looking at them and thinking they were awkward. There's a really abrupt transition where you go from the toe increases to just the body of the foot. And it looks like a corner. And I really didn't like that. So every time I looked at them, I'd stop knitting and fidget with it. And then I thought that the heel was very clever with the afterthought and then adding some and how the decrease worked right up until I got to, and then Kitchener. Well, you're knitting this way with the sock, and it wanted you to Kitchener, so you would have ended up with a bump and a little knot right on either side of your heel, so you'd be stepping on it. So I did that once and I didn't like it and I ripped it out. And then I did the Kitchener, I moved all of the stitches so that I could do the Kitchener this way, which worked, but also left a little corner. And there's just something not quite right about the heel. I'm not super pleased with it. I thought it was a very clever way to do it, but I don't really like how it turned out. And I was really tempted to rip them out. And a friend said, well, just put them on, wear them around the house for a day, and see if you like them. See if that little bump bothers you. And it doesn't. I can't feel it. But I can see it. So they're not going to be my favorite socks. They are very comfortable. They have all the benefits of the yarn. This is the leftover bit of a double-stranded sock blank that my spinning guild did as a project. We each got the blanks and then we dyed them up. And I really liked how the yarn is wearing in the other pair of socks that I made. I didn't have quite enough, so the heel and the cuff are done in Regia. It's my first Regia. It's meant to be a baby yarn, but it was the color I wanted, and it was 20 grams, so it was about the right weight, so we went with that. And I think it matches very well, both in terms of the color matching and also in the weight of the yarns matching. The sock blank part is 75-25 Corriedale. It is not superwash. Corriedale nylon, and the Regia is 75-25 superwash wool nylon. I think they're going to hold up really well. They're very comfortable to wear, and the shorter length of the sock was not really a design feature. It was necessitated by the amount of yarn I had left, and I didn't really want to throw in another color or go buy another mini, so this is what I have. I really like the shorter length socks, so I'm probably going to make myself up some shorties for summer, but those are done, and I have worn them. I just have them on the blockers for show today. I have coffee. It is yummy. All right, so works in progress. I have made some more progress on my Multnomah shawl, which, oh, I did not leave it at an end. Sorry about that. Is Glow Beauty from Within, Pan is Back colorway. I'm kind of cruising along here. I finished the other shawl, and then I set in this Progress Keeper, and I've done this much since. It's just moving slow. That's all I got to say. I really like it. I love the color. I love the yarn. The pattern is not bothersome at all. It is much easier now that I put in markers for each lace repeat. When I was just trying to count that out each time, and I only had the markers for the center panel, it was a little bit more frustrating, but I am reading Knitting in Plain English, and she talked about giving yourself as many advantages as you possibly can, and you know, basically, what do you care if somebody looks at your work and it has, you know, little notes to yourself all over the place and markers all over the place? If that makes the knitting process easier and more enjoyable for you and makes it so you never have to rip out your lace, go for it. And I cannot agree more with that statement. There's a couple of other things in the book that I don't necessarily agree with. Some of her discussion on how yarn is made. The fact that she thinks Aran weight is lighter than worsted weight. And maybe that's just because it was when she was a knitting instructor. I don't know. Sometimes terminology changes, but Aran is thicker than worsted weight, and yeah. But a lot of her advice on really practical knitting stuff makes a lot of sense, especially the section on not. I have totally digressed. Oh well. On making certain that if you are going to knit something from a picture, that you can see the important parts of the knitted garment. You can see how the shoulders work. You can see how the waist works. That you're not falling in love with it because the bag the model is wearing is really cute, or the hat she's wearing is really cute, or the idea is that you'll just be much happier having spent all the time and the money and the effort to knit something if you knew what it was going to look like beforehand. And if the model is in some twisted, contorted pose and she's carrying a giant bag and you can't see both of her shoulders, there's a good possibility that sweater doesn't quite fit nicely, and so the photographer is trying to make it look better. And maybe you should be wary of that and seek out some other pictures and find some more comments. And I think that's really, really, really good advice. So all in all, check out Knitting in Plain English. Really enjoying that book, and I'm really enjoying knitting on the scarf. That said, I suddenly found myself down to one project, and that's not going to work, right? So I immediately cast on, and this one I did leave without any extra stuff, this little cardigan for the person who will soon be my niece. Well, she will when my sister's finished making her. My sister loves the color blue. It's always been her thing. So despite the fact that I know that I'm getting a niece, I am knitting in primary color blue. That's okay. This yarn is Cascades yarn, Cherub DK. I even wrote notes this time. That's what the paper you're hearing. Cherub DK, which is 55 nylon, 45 acrylic, or maybe it's the other way around. It'll be in my Ravelry link. But it's really, really soft. And I got a really good deal in it. I feel bad about it because this lovely woman whose knitting store I'd never been into before was closing. So she had everything on really slash prices. And you know when you walk into some place and you're like, oh, this is a lovely store. And you really are looking forward to continuing to shop there, and then you find out that you know, you've come in within the last 30 days of its business. That was my experience here. So I bought every bit of this blue that she had, which wasn't very much, and some teal. But back to the sweater. This is Knitting Expat Designs Double Dutch Child's Cardigan. These are size 5s. The pattern calls for 7s and 6s, but it also calls for DK weight. So this is an Aran weight, and I found that if I dropped down to a size 5, I could get gauge, and it wasn't super tight on my hands or anything like that. So I just went for it. It's a nice, it'll be a little bit warmer, a sweater, but that's okay. So it has a big cable down the back and 2 cables down the front, and then you pick up again to do a shawl collar. And it is cruising right along. It has been a long time since I did cables, and they look so weird when you're just doing them. But there's that. And I don't know what this was originally designed for. I found it at the thrift store, but it makes an awesome traveling yarn bowl. It's not really a project bag, although it has successfully kept the project in it. Like thrown into my bag, just tucked in like this. It's just tight enough it'll hold it. But it sits up flat on the table, and it holds the yarn ball very, very nicely. And I don't have to worry about dropping it. So I am also using one of these little rosewood cable needles for that project, and this is the first time that I have gotten to use them, and they're really nice. I love wood. It comes from being a woodworker's daughter. So there's that. I am also going to cast on another pair of socks. This is Online Super Sock, and I am going to cast on the Hermione's Everyday Sock pattern. I had asked some friends for their sock pattern recommendations because I want to try different construction methods, and multiple people suggested the Hermione's Everyday Sock. And then I pulled out the sock yarn that I have that, you know, I bought some that I was really excited to use, and it was really pretty. And then I pulled it out and I realized that I had Slytherin and Ravenclaw colors, and I just couldn't bring myself to cast on Hermione's Everyday Socks in Slytherin or Ravenclaw colors, so I found this nice teal. Figuring that she must have worn not her house colors at some point, but probably wouldn't have worn the other two. Maybe Ravenclaw. So that's where I'm at with that. I haven't actually cast it on, but that is the next project on the list there. And I did just want to show off my new needles. Knitter's Pride, size 7s. I was doing the gauge for the Double Dutch cardigan and realized that I didn't have a size 7 anymore because my 7s broke. They were the cubits, and they just snapped at the metal where the metal and the wood met. And my husband happened to be sitting next to me, so he and my kids got me these for Mother's Day, which I thought was very sweet. So on to crochet. I have once again set aside my weather blanket. Hopefully I will catch up with it and not set it aside for too long, but another project came up. And so because I set that aside, the small square granny tile blanket is also being set aside because that was intended to use up the scraps from the one. The project is going to be a late wedding present for a cousin of mine. And it is a joint project with my mother and my sister. And so this is in a Yarn Gardens spring hexie blanket, and we are doing it in what will be a slightly bigger than a queen size blanket in what I hope will coordinate with my cousin's bedroom colors. So I have all of these hexies. Now I was initially completely confused as to why I was getting a pinwheel there. Followed the pattern, checked the counts, got it all. I was actually working 1 stitch ahead. So I have 2 of these light gray. I have 2 of these darker gray, these charcoal. And then I have 3 dark purple ones. And 3 light purple ones. And somewhere in the light purple ones, I suddenly realized what I was doing. So this is what the pattern says that it should look like. Now, I kind of like the swirls, so I decided not to go back and fix them. And they match up. The sizes are the same. All of my sisters are nice and straight like this, which is why I was confused. Like, oh, this pattern doesn't work. Oh, wait, my sister can make it work. So that is the plan. We are going to join them together using more of this cream that looks a little yellow on the purples and very white on the grays. We thought about using black, but it was just a little too close to the charcoal. So very, very soon that will move along. And we will have a giant blanket, and once it is all put together, I will take a big picture of it and post that in a future episode. And that is really all I am doing with crochet. But each of these hexes was about a day's worth of work. Like this was all of the crafting I could get done in a day. And then I went back and did the borders. So that really ate up a lot of my time since last we talked, although I've got a lot of things to show you. A lot of what I did really was on this project here. So that is our crocheting. Spinning is something that is still very hard for me with my feet. So it is taking me a lot longer to get things done than I am used to, which is bothering me. But I am still getting stuff done. So I have 1 full bobbin of the Spinning Guild's Wool Potluck, which is alpaca, unknown wool, Targhee wool, Lincoln wool, Corriedale, Eastern Frisian, and llama. Maybe. That's awesome. The end is never quite as. So I have decided that what I'm going to do with this yarn is I am going to spin up the first 10 ounces, which is a gigantic basket. And despite the fact that I have all this on here, and this is hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of work, I can't really tell looking in the basket that I've taken any wool out of the basket at all, but I have. Once I get it all done, then I'm going to apply it. And my plan is to make a sweater to take backpacking and hiking with, something that is a very lightweight cardigan. I don't have a pattern picked out yet, but something that overall doesn't weigh very much, but because it is woolen spun and wool and alpaca and llama, it should be very, very warm. The last backpacking trip I took, I was very worried about weight, the weight of the backpack, although I suppose my own body weight affects that. And I decided not to take any warm clothes. So I had tank tops and I had a rain jacket, and I figured, well, the rain jacket should be sufficient if I get cold. It'll break the wind and I can use it, you know, to keep me warm. The problem with that plan was it rained our entire trip. And luckily we were hiking to a cabin. But rain jackets aren't really warm when they're wet. And when you're not moving. So my rain jacket was wet. And we were sitting in this cabin, mostly playing lots and lots of sheep's head, because there wasn't much else we could do. It was just downpour. And I was cold. And I really, the whole time, regretted several things that I had taken out of my backpack the night before to try to reduce the weight. So my plan is to use this wool to make myself a real lightweight, but warm and insulative sweater that I can take on camping and hiking trips. And it, you know, should take probably a year to get done at this rate. You know, but that is that. Super warm, super lightweight. That is our plan. So one of the other things I've done since last we talked was work on how long it takes me to spin a given weight of yarn, a given weight of wool into a given weight of yarn. That's an awkward sentence. So what I did was took 5 sections of 1/2 ounce each. This is brown sheep wool. And I spun up, I'm having a hard time holding this. Okay, I spun up a fingerling weight, I spun up a DK weight, I spun up a worsted weight, I spun up an Aran weight, and I spun up a bulky weight. And then determined how long, right, it just flat out timed myself how long it took to do. These two I had to stop and take breaks during, but these I was able to get done in just one sitting. Not that I did all 3 of them at one sitting, but I did each of them at a sitting. And that's just a function of my foot, not a function of how fast I spin. Normally, before I injured my foot, I could spin for 16 hours in a day. Hopefully I'll get back to that instead of somewhere between 20 minutes to an hour. Can you tell I'm frustrated about this? So each of these weighs an ounce, or 1/2 ounce rather, and has allowed me to calculate how long it would take me to spin from 1 hour and 20 minutes on the fingering to 9 minutes on the bulky, with worsted working out to be about 20 minutes, 20 something minutes. I don't have my notes in front of me. Okay, I've now rubbed wool into my eye. And part of the reason I wanted to do it was just because I'm curious, but also because I get requests for custom spinning, and I need to have an idea of how long it'll take me to spin something so that I can give an accurate price estimate, and give people a quote that really means something that I can stand behind, that I'm not overcharging them or underselling myself. So the next thing I think I'm going to do with these is knit up a sample. I think I'm going to leave, I don't know, maybe a yard of each of them so that you can see the yarn, but also then so that they would be a knit sample of the weights. And I may decide to dye each one a different color, just so that when I'm talking to someone, if I don't have them in my hand to hand them to them, I can say, oh, well, the blue one is the fingering weight, and, you know, the green one is the worsted, whatever. I may not do that, but that's where I'm kind of thinking about it right now. I think this was definitely an interesting exercise. And I enjoyed it, although it did serve to highlight how short of a length of time I'm able to spin right now. So that brings me to this little guy. And we are welcoming the Electric Eel Wheel Mini to the spinning family here at Moonbound. And I have spun a bobbin on him. This is also brown sheep wool. And all in all, I'm really happy with this little guy. He is a little bit louder than I think I expected, and maybe a little slower. But that could be just because I had been previously working on lace weight. So there is that. I think that I am going to primarily be using him to spin up weaving fiber, although I haven't taken this off yet. So my plan is to spin up, I bought the bonus package. This was a Kickstarter in case you didn't know that. And so I have 3 bobbins. So I was going to spin up 2 bobbins and ply them, run it through its paces, see how well it works, and then make some decisions. So I don't actually know how long this this first skein of yarn is going to be, and that might, I have fiber everywhere. Please excuse me, I'm so sorry. I started putting lotion on my face, and it makes my face feel nice, but it also makes every little bit of fiber that gets anywhere near me actually stick to my face. So I'm really excited about the mini. I'm really happy to have a way to spin that doesn't require my feet. So there's that. I don't know that it's going to be super versatile for what I was thinking it would be. Like, I could take it with me to festivals, because it's really not something that I can converse over the top of reasonably. You know, you can sit at your spinning wheel in a group of people who are sitting at their spinning wheels, and you can all talk. This gets a little loud. It's not super bad, but when I am sitting in my living room, I'm using headphones to listen to the TV, listen to the program I'm watching, not just letting it be out in the air. So there's that. I'm going to just talk about weaving for a second, because I haven't gotten any weaving done, but one of the things that I'm working on is developing a class to teach people the triangle loom and some different adaptations for how to use it. And I'm working on that right now, developing this class. And in combination with that, my dad is developing some smaller in-class looms, so that it would be reasonable to expect that in a couple-hour class you could actually finish a project, whereas on a big loom you probably wouldn't get a project actually done during the class. So that is what I'm working on for that. And I'm really, really quite excited about that. The next thing I wanted to talk about is sewing. And this is going to seem kind of strange what I'm going to show you for the next thing that I worked on. But I think it's really important that we just are completely real and honest about life and how things work. So I made myself a bunch of pads this month. And they turned out rather well, so I'm going to show them off. And they're just very simple. They're leftover bits of flannel that I've had from kid projects. So these are horses. You can't really tell anymore because it was just odds and ends and scraps. And they have removable inserts that go in and snaps to snap onto your underwear. Girls bleed. It's what we do. We have to deal with it. This is how I'm choosing to deal with it. They are really, really comfortable. Soft flannel right up against what is probably one of the most sensitive areas on a woman's body. Makes more sense to me than plastic. And They're washable. Throw them in the laundry. They work really well. I really like them. I know that lots of people have more complicated sewn pads. I don't feel the need for all of that. This works really well for me. And so I made up a whole bunch of them one day, and really got me back into sewing because it was quick little projects, and I haven't been down in my studio very often because the stairs are still a problem. So just spending an afternoon working on that was a good thing for me in many ways. The next thing I want to talk about is a hand sewn dress that I am working on for my show at Garfield Farms Rare Breed Show. I will be vending and discussing spinning and really anything else you wanted to talk to me about. So I did hand sewn buttonholes and redid this hem and have the skirt exactly how I want it. I really, really love how the skirt's turned out. This is multiple layers of cotton, and it's lays thick and beautiful and everything that an 1840s, I think the pattern is actually 1837, but an 1840s era dress should be. And then I went to work on the bodice. And if you come out to the show, you will not see me wearing this bodice because I won't be wearing it. I love lots of things about this. I love the cuff detail. I love the way the arms look in theory. I even like the idea of how, there's still pins in this, how this is meant to look like it's gathered, but it's all sewn in tight. The problem is that there have just been an absolute ton of issues while I was sewing this. And what I think happened was that the pattern company disassembled a dress from 1870 and then laid it out. And I don't think it was drafted well for the larger sizes. And I am a larger size. So this was draped and fit across the duct tape dress form that I made, and it laid all right last year. I didn't have any fastenings sewn into the back. So I just had it pinned on. And I think that made it work all right. The whole day I was fighting it. It was trying to ride up and back. And so I spent a lot of time in the last month working on fixing this. I had run out of time to make it completely hand sewn, so I had done machine sewing on it, and I have replaced almost all of that. Really, I have like 4 seams left that I was going to do last because they're primarily decorative seams, and I needed it to be functional before I made it decorative. And I redid all of the gathering in hand stitch, and it doesn't fit well. And it's not that I'm a different size than I was last time. It's that it just, all the pieces lay kind of in the wrong spot. So the picture of this dress shows this collar being right here. But when I put it on me, it's out here. And instead of laying nice and loose across the front, it's pulled really tight. And in 1800s, 1840s dresses, the shoulders are in a weird spot. And I know that. And I don't have a problem with it. It isn't awkward. I'm used to it. But I think they got, if you look at this, it has where the shoulder seam is. So this should be, you know, right about here. And then it has this chunk of fabric. And then it has these gathers. And then it has this big long puff. Well, nobody's arm is this long. So these gathers, instead of sitting right here, sit here. And then that big long puff sits from here to about here. And that doesn't work. And I thought, well, okay, I should add something to make that poof poof out. But I can't move my arms. So I'm going to have to redraft this whole shirt and hope that I can fix it. But I don't have time to do that this week. So I'm not going to get to wear this week, and I am going to just set it aside and get some more things done. And so I went from being really pleased with how this project was going to being really unhappy. I did, in fact, already sew this hook and eye on once, hook and eye tape, and then realized that I had sewed it in upside down, which led me to asking a friend to come over and help me with fitting it and making sure that I had gotten it in the right spot on this tape so they'd lay nicely, and it doesn't. And it looks awkward and it feels awkward, and I don't think anyone of the era would have actually worn it like this. I think they would have gone, I've screwed something up, and fixed it. And so I have screwed something up, and I'm going to fix it. Hopefully I can still use a good chunk of this. That's my hope. It might have to be a slightly more simple dress. I'm not sure. But there's that. I do have to now scramble to find a blouse to wear with the skirt. So that's this week's goals. Other things, and this is mostly acquisition because I haven't gotten to it, is I have picked up some fabric that I'm going to make some shorts out of. It's really soft. It's a soft knit jersey, and it should make some nice pairs of shorts for summer wear. They'll be tight, but I'll be wearing them under skirts anyway, so they'll be clean, not tight. And then I found this, and I fell in love. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. I bought everything they had. But this is double thickness and super see-through. So I had been thinking some sort of, very full skirt. But I think even a very full skirt is going to be a little bit see-through, because that's 4 thicknesses, and I can still see the camera. You may not be able to see me, but I can still see the camera. So I have no idea what I'm going to make with this, but it's just so pretty. It's got just a lovely little shine in the thicker stripes, and I have, I don't know, about 4 yards, maybe a little bit more of that, and then I'm going to make a skirt or a dress or a wrap or something out of it. I just couldn't resist it. So that is sewing. Some successes, some failures, some plans. It's kind of how that works. It's kind of how life works, isn't it? Okay, on to the dyeing. So I had been planning for a long time to try dyeing with avocado. And I had been taking the peel and the pit and throwing them in my freezer and saving them until I got enough. Well, I did not realize that I had way more than enough a long time ago. So when I started pulling the avocado pits and peels out, I realized that my husband was completely right in saying that I had taken up too much of the freezer space with the dyeing stuff. I had 21 ounces of pit and peel of avocado. And I have dyed something like 18 ounces of fiber now. And I could have kept going, but the dye was not in any way exhausted, and it is the exact same color from the first dye bath all the way through. But it was, I was just done. It was done, and the dye bath was starting to look a little, ugh. So we finished, and this is the color that I have gotten. As far as process, this fiber is mordanted in alum, and applied to the dye bath wet. I did also follow a Wooden Nest's advice in that I used, and I went out and purchased specially an aluminum pot for doing this, because she said that she had no trouble with getting pretty pinks and having it stay, but without mortating it, but had realized that perhaps that some of that was due to using an aluminum pot. So I went out and got myself an aluminum pot because I liked the results she was getting. And I like the results I'm getting. One of the other things that I did was a big hunk of cotton muslin. I used that to strain the pits and the peels out, and then I let it cook in those pits and peels as well. And it appears to be color fast as well. I don't know how long that's going to last, but it is a lovely color, and I'll probably make something for my daughter out of it. So if it is not super color fast, it won't be that big of a deal. This is on Cardigan. Then I found a bag of sawdust. One of the benefits to being a woodworker's daughter is when Dad gets interesting wood, he saves it for me. However, neither of us labeled the bag. So I thought that I was using Padauk, but it was not Padauk. It was Osage Orange. And my first clue was when I pulled this out of the dye bath. Isn't that gorgeous? So this is wood shavings of Osage Orange on Lincoln. And this is the first dye bath. There was significant color change between the first and the second dye bath because this is the second. Now it's still beautiful, but it doesn't quite have the intensity. This is not mordanted. I tend to not use a mordant if I'm using wood because they tend to have a lot of tannin and don't need it. Both of these are also color fast currently. They do not lose color in water. So I have a small amount of either of these. Then I did, then I found another bag of sawdust, which is how I knew, which was the other clue that this was not Padauk. Both bags of sawdust were red in color when I found them. But this is the Padauk. And this is also on Lincoln. So it's actually quite similar to the avocado, but a little browner in tone. And it's just really a soft, pretty color. I've used it before, and so I was really startled when the orange came out of the bath, not what I was expecting. On a trip out west a while ago, my dad and sister and mom picked up some fallen lodgepole pine bark, and I used that in a dye bath. Probably won't again. This is probably a limited quantity only. Not as a comment on the color, but because it leached a lot of pine pitch into my pot, so I had to stop and pour off the dye and scrub the pot out, which was an all-day process. But it did produce a really lovely color, and it smells nice cooking, as does the Padauk. The Padauk smells a lot like wintergreen when you're doing it. However, if you have a pot of both of these going at the same time next to each other, the smell is not pleasant. I'm not really sure how two pleasant smells combine to make a not pleasant smell, but they did. This is the lodgepole pine, and it is also on the Lincoln. And I rather like the color, but I don't really have access to that kind of pine, and I don't really want to play with pine pitch and wool dye again. So there's that. It was a lot of fun. It was good to get back out on the dye porch. It was good to get started doing this stuff again. I really enjoyed myself. and I really like the results. So moving on to talk about my shop, because you'll notice it's still not open. Well, that is going to change very quickly. I am completing my inventory and a relabeling process. I will not have it done in time for this weekend show. I will not have the relabeling done, rather. But the store should open probably this month. That's the best I'm going to do. I am working on some stitch markers and some project bags, which will be done for the show this weekend. And I'm kind of excited about it. If you are anywhere near La Fox, Illinois this weekend, Saturday, come check us out. It is a wonderful show. If you don't know where La Fox, Illinois is, but you do know where St. Charles or Camden Hills or Elgin as a stretch, it's kind of near there. That's where we are. It is Garfield Farm Museum. It is the Rare Breed Show. They are a absolutely wonderful museum. It is an 1840s era stagecoach inn that was continuously owned by one family until it became a museum in 1977. And they have kept up with animals that would have been held on the property around the 1840s. Later it became a sheep farm when the trains went through, but in the 1840s it was primarily an inn and a tavern. And they run tours through their museum on several days of the week. I don't remember which, so I'm not going to say, so I screw it up. But they also are very involved in advocacy. Hold on. Okay. But they are very involved in providing an advocacy program for encouraging and supporting rare breeds and heritage breeds in the United States. And so this weekend's show is focused on that. They have and raise black Java chickens, and they have there'll be someone there talking about that. There'll be someone there talking about their oxen and their turkeys and their sheep. There will also be a whole bunch of other farmers who are local or semi-local to that area talking about various different rare breeds. Just a whole bunch of knowledgeable, passionate people discussing the thing that they love the best. Some of actually the Lincoln I just showed you came from one of the farmers there last year who is a chef, and he was interested in being more involved in where he got his product from, and that's how he ended up becoming a sheep farmer. And just all sorts of really knowledgeable people. So if you're anywhere near there, you should totally come out, check it out. You can meet me, learn about some spinning. You can talk to the people and learn about the tavern. You can probably take some farm animals home if that's your thing. Certainly some chickens. Certainly some chickens. There's always chickens. There's usually people selling some of their farm's product, whether that is fiber or that is a meat or a soap or something like that. But in any event, you should totally go down and check out the farm and check out the museum. And as a surprise bonus, you'll get to see what I do to solve the whole I don't have a shirt for this weekend thing. Okay, I'm done being silly, and I want to say that despite the fact that I'm kind of rambly and super distracting, I had a lot of fun chatting with you today, and I promise no more radio silences that are that long moving forward. I hope that all of your projects are going well and that they are moving forward and that you are inspired for more projects and more things. Thank you for watching. Hit the like if you did. Please subscribe, and I will chat with you again later. Bye.